This is a clinic on how to build benchwork that can be developed into the layout that you see here. I have another video that shows the steps to complete this entire layout, but this shorter video will just show you how to do the benchwork, and then you can decide how you want to develop your benchwork into what kind of layout. Right, the first thing I did was go to the hardware store, and I had them cut a sheet of 3/8" plywood into sections, one of them equaling 42 inches by 54 inches, which would be the size of the layout. I also bought some 1x2 to make the braces underneath, and more braces will be put under that after we start cutting it. So the first thing you do is cut the braces to fit your piece, and screw them in from the top, as you can see down here on the bottom. Next, I drew in my railway using a marker, and this is all freehand. So I drew it in with my, this is going to be the depot area right here, and this siding will join in right here with a left-hand turnout and run around this way, and then right here it will be going up a grade, and it'll get to the top of the grade here, where it'll come around and come back down the grade and continue the circle until such time as you want to back into the station. So once that is drawn, in the red marker you see where I've outlined around my rail lines, and when we cut this out, this section right here will be picked up, and then we will have an incline going up into this area right here. Now, before we can cut, when we cut this out, to avoid the chance of breaking this thin neck right here, as you can see the grain is running this way, and it's going to be thin through here. When I cut it, I'm not going to cut one part of it right here. I'm going to leave one part of it intact until we get the braces in. So I drilled a wide hole here and a wide hole here, wide enough to get my jigsaw blade into it, and then cut around like that. Now, before I cut it the other way, I flipped it over and put some masking tape on it to kind of hold it even so that I could cut the other side down. Now, once I have both sides cut, you can see it still hold together here, but while it's upside down, I don't have to worry about anything breaking because it's all lying flat. I have my square out here to check to make sure that everything here is perpendicular. It will help you considerably if everything is perpendicular, because now we're going to, now that it's turned over like this, we can see where we're going to put the braces, and I'm going to have 5 braces in this. So I measured this. Well, I didn't actually measure it. What I'm doing here is measuring how far. In other words, I want one here and I want one here, and I'm getting those inches so that I can mark it here and here, and so that I can have my braces running where I need them. Now, if your base board was cut perfectly square, you can cut all of these pieces the same length, but I wouldn't count on it, and as it turned out, mine wasn't perfectly square, so I had to measure each one of these to put it in. But I had it marked. I don't know if you can see the little marks that I made here, but I had the marks made here and the same length down here, so that these are perpendicular to the cross pieces. And also, this will tell me on the other side where this mark is. It'll tell me on the other side where I can screw in from the top. But I put some 1.5 inch screws in through here on either side to hold all of these braces in. And as you can see, a brace runs through here, it runs across here where this will hold up, and also this will screw down to it. As it turns out, before I finished, I put another cross piece right here and put another brace across so that I could screw this piece into it. You're going to need one there. But I didn't need any more braces anywhere else. Okay, now using the same measurements that I had before, I measure where my cross brace is underneath. And of course the cross braces are holding this up now. We don't have to worry about it breaking anymore. But once I get that in, I can screw everything in across the top. Don't make the mistake that I did right here. If you see this little black spot there, you don't want, well, that's the last place you can have one. You don't want one any place over in here because this place is going to be raised up. So you only screw on the outside of this red line, the outside of the red line. Now to build our first braces. The first thing I had to do is decide how high I wanted it. And between the top of the lower base and the bottom of the upper base, I wanted 2 inches. So to that I had to add this width right here of the 1x2, which is actually 1 1/2 inches exactly, and then I had to add another 3/8 for the thickness of my sub base, and then I added 2 inches to that. So I ended up with 3 7/8 inches, and that's how long I cut these 2 pieces right here. You will need a total of 4 of these, so you can cut them all at once. But you'll notice that I have marked this. I think I have a better picture. Yes, I've marked a spot in here, 3/4 of an inch up, 3/4 of an inch in, which is of course half of this 1.5 inch width. I've also marked a spot here, 3/4 of an inch up from the floor. So if I put a screw in through here and in through there, with it turned up this way, when I turn it back around, this bottom should match this bottom. So as you can see, I've got them screwed in now, but this is facing down, and eventually I'm going to want it to go up. So before I cut this piece down here, I'll lay these over and flip the entire thing over. Now I'll cut out the piece that I left so that I can raise the upper level up. I'll flip these pieces around, and then I can mark my spot and put in my screws to hold this piece up. Alright, as you can see, we have no floor here to put the railroad track on for this line coming around and through because it's all raised up. So we need to get a piece of board through there. Now as you can see, there's a brace under here to rest the board on, and there's one on the other side. You can see it a little bit better here. And from the outside of this board to the outside of the other one, I measured at 12.5 inches. So I cut a piece of board from what was left over from the main piece, and I cut it at 12.5 inches, made it the entire length, or rather width of the layout, and clamped it down. Next I tipped it up and scribed along here with a pencil. So then it was simple to cut the piece, and now I have one that will fit exactly. So first I will use some contact cement where it's going to meet those cross braces underneath, and then I will screw it in at the edges, and there we have a piece that fits, but as you can see, there's a slight rise here. You might be able to see that. I can't tell if it's a riser, but I do know that I did flip it over and put some clamps underneath just to make sure that I had a nice, tight, even fit. All right, but now we have the braces in up here to our level area, but our incline here, it's kind of a very shallow incline here, and then it gets steep all of a sudden. Well, we need to keep the incline exactly the same all the way for smoother operation of our locomotives. So to do this, first of all, I took some measurements. Now this is the edge of the pieces. This is level up here, and then it starts coming down. So I measured this at 68 inches, and that's from right here where the cut starts to right here on the underside. Remember, we're measuring the run, not the distance, because this length on top will be a little bit longer. So to get the correct amount, I'm going to put a brace at 48 inches. Remember, I already have one here, but I'm going to put one at 48 inches and one at 34 inches. And as it turns out, I also put one down here later. So how do we figure how long a piece to put here and put here? Well, you need to know your math. So we have our run, we have our rise, and this is the distance. Now our rise, remember, was 2 inches between the top of the bottom piece of plywood to the bottom of the top piece of plywood. So we have to add the amount of the top piece of plywood, which is 5/16 of an inch. So we have 2.3125 as our rise. We have our run at 68 inches. So we divide the rise by the run and get 0.034, or a 3.4% grade. Now, to find our 48 inches, how long it should be, well, we take that and we multiply it by our grade. So 48 inches times 0.034 is equal to 1.632. 0.632 is almost the same as 5/8. We're like 7/1000ths of an inch off, and I really don't think we're going to be doing anything that close. So 1 5/8 inches is going to be our rise. But remember, we have to add, we have 1 5/8 inches, and we have the 1.5 inch of the brace we're going to screw it to. And in here you can see we do count the 5/16 on the top, but we don't count the 5/16 underneath, so they cancel each other out. So the length of the piece of board that I'm going to have to use for my brace is going to be 3 1/8 inches. We do the same calculation at 34 inches and end up with 2 5/8 inches is what it will be at that point. So here is my 3 1/8 inch piece screwed in, and here is my 2 5/8 inch piece screwed in. So now we have it pretty stable, because remember, we have braces over here along this one, and we have a brace here and a brace here. So for this one, I just put a piece in, use my pencil to mark it, and cut off that piece to go in. While I have this up, when I was working on it, I realized that I needed another piece here. So I used my, because I was sagging a little bit at this point, so I used my formula again to figure out how long a piece went here. Also, this piece right here, which is flat and is at the level of the front up here, this became a little weak. So I also put in a cross member across here and screwed this into it. That's just to stabilize this piece right here. So now I have in my braces. You can see my board under here, and now my rise is going to be smooth and easy all the way up. When you run your hand across here and start going up, you don't feel any change at all. Your hand doesn't, and neither will your locomotives. And over here, when you get over the top, you don't feel any change when you run your hand across here. Even though it is an incline, there's no swoop here, and there's no dip down here when you get to the top. As you get very often when you use prefabricated inclines. All right, the next, I've decided that I'm going to be putting a mountain in across here, and since the mountain is going to come across here where I had my turnout, I needed to move my turnout out of the way and keep it out. I still have plenty of room down here for my siding, but I did need to move that back. So now I'm ready to lay my cork, using my turnout to judge how I cut this this strip of cork so it could fit in against this. And as you'll also notice, I'm only using half of the cork road bed. I'm not using the entire amount. That's because if anyone has seen my ballasting clinics, I believe it's titled Ballasting Flex Track. The fall on the side I like to create with just ballast. I don't like the wide cork using to make the fall. I think it creates problems that aren't necessary. You can be the judge of whether or not the way I do ballast looks good, but I really think it's much easier, much faster, although it does use a little more ballast. Ballast isn't that expensive. All right, this is something I probably should have done earlier before I laid the cork, but I realized that I wasn't going to be able to stabilize this track well enough without getting into it from the top. So I cut out this circle. This will also allow me to, I'm going to need to ballast all the way through here, because when you look through this front, through here, you can see all the way back to here. So it needs to be ballast. It's also, the tunnel will need to be masked on either side. And of course this access hole will allow me to do that. Also, to have a way to reinsert it, I put these posts in, cut these posts the same as the even part, and these a little shorter because remember we're going downhill here. But I just cut them to fit under what was already there, screwed them in from the top, and also flipped it over and screwed them in from the bottom to stabilize them. Then I can replace this and screw it down later when I'm finished all the work that I have to do. Because, and this can be put in, I can put the ground cover over it, and it's like it was never there. Okay, so now I've laid my track, and you can see here I put in 2 railers. Railers also serve as good railroad crossings. They're actually look like wooden railroad crossings, so I'm going to have a road that's going to come across here and come across here, and then it's going to go in here. Try to get these straight. I didn't get them too straight, and it makes my road a little crooked, but I'm not real worried about it. But the track, when I laid it down, I laid in these pieces, and then I laid this piece up to here. I think there were 2 pieces. The pieces are 30 inches long, so I laid it, and it stopped right there about. And then I laid the rest of it along through here, soldering as I went, all the way up and around, and I finished up right about here. When you want to put your last 2 pieces together, you want to do it on a straightaway. You do not want to do it on a curve. It must be on a straightaway. If you try to do it on a curve, you're going to create all kinds of problems for yourself. So plan ahead and make sure there are plenty of straightaways on here. Here, 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 here. There are plenty of straightaways. Make sure you end up there. Anyway, I ended at this space. Now I'm going to turn my layout around and show you. This is where I had the last piece at the top on the right. Now it's coming from the left. So I've put my joiners on and pushed them all the way back. See, I've removed the ties here so that I can push these joiners all the way back. Just this little lip is over here where I'm going to set down the other rail. Okay, push them all the way back. Then I attached my other piece of rail, and it's of course going to be too long. It has to be long enough to reach. And I'm going to lay it down across the other end. And as you can see, I can see my end right here, so I'll cut that off there. I can see my end right here, so I'll cut this right here. And then they lay down, You push the joiner across and solder. It's the simplest thing in the world. Then you take the ties that you cut out, you put them back in and glue them down, and they'll be ready for ballasting. Next, we're going to power the track. This is a small layout. It only needs power. It needs to be powered in one place. So I have the positive lead soldered over here and the negative lead soldered over here. Now you'll also see another positive lead over here. Now the reason that is there is because this piece of rail relies on this point up here to pick up power from this rail. Well, you should never rely on a point to pick up power. It may not get there all the way, it may be dirty, and it may not pick up the power. So because this one is positive, this one is positive, and now I always have power in this rail when the power is on, and it goes all the way through the point. As far as this rail, it doesn't need one, because this, you can put one in if you want, but this particular rail goes all the way around and comes back along the turnout and continues right through here. Right? Continues right through there. And of course the point on this side, this is also powered by the power going that way. So you don't really need power here, but you can put it in if you want to. Once you've soldered those in, and I said this piece, this is my main line right here, and this is the siding, and I've joined it in with this and drilled a hole through my braces and taken it up through the top where I will connect it to my controller. So now when I hook up my controller, I'll be ready to test my track with the train for the first time. This particular setup cost me $80, and that's all. So well, with the track being the most expensive part of it. There are many variations of this particular layout. You can reverse the loop. You can put the siding on the other side. You can put sidings inside the dog bone there. You can build a mountain across one side, across the other, across both, in the middle. There's no limit to what you can do with this. Only limitation is your imagination. So I hope you enjoyed this clinic, and now I'm going to run the train for you.